Dear Evan Hansen Review. Ghoulish Ben Platt sinks high school musical. Ouch. Hi there. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mateo Chavez Lewis, and I am a fansen. It feels really good to get that off my chest. A fansen is an internet term for somebody who is a fan of the musical Dear Evan Hansen, and it's kind of become a no-no word in recent internet debate, because the movie version of Dear Evan Hansen just came out, and people are not happy about it. Dear Evan Hansen, the musical version, premiered on Broadway in 2016, and it follows this kid named Evan Hansen who's 17 years old, and he struggles with very serious mental health issues, specifically a lot of social anxiety. All of a sudden, he finds himself in this situation where his classmate, Connor, commits suicide, and Connor's parents become convinced that Evan was Connor's best friend. At first he goes along with it because he doesn't want to be the one to break their hearts, and, he's a teenager with anxiety. Of course he doesn't know how to say, actually, no, your son didn't have any friends. Of course he's not going to say that. I mean, it's the right thing to do, but he's 17, he is clearly very unwell, and he cracks under the pressure. He makes a mistake. It turns out he actually ends up forging a very deep connection with this family over their shared bond of losing Connor. They don't know that he didn't really know Connor at all. But he ends up kind of feeling like they love him for who he is for the first time in his life. He's never felt that before from anybody. Obviously, in the end, the truth comes out, and he loses all these people that he's grown so close with, and he realizes that forging connections based on lies is not the way to go. It doesn't help, because in the end, those people will find out who you really are, and if you lie about who you are, then no one's ever going to be able to love you for who you are. So you should always be truthful. You should always be yourself. Anyway, so that's the major takeaway from the show. And it's a metaphor, right? This lie about Connor is representative of all the little lies that we tell people about who we are when we pretend to be someone that we're not in order to get people to like us. And this musical says, don't do that. It's bad and it doesn't work. And you are worth loving just the way you are without pretending. Also, don't lie to a grieving family, dude. Dick move. So Dear Evan Hansen came out when I was 17, which is the same age that the character is supposed to be. And I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues myself at that time, so I really felt seen in this character, and this show really taught me a lot of very important lessons that helped me move forward from that place in my life. So this musical does have a very special place in my heart, so I am kind of speaking from a biased place here, but the lessons that it taught me were really, really important, and I needed to learn them in order to be where I am today. Then it got adapted to film this year. I was lucky enough to see the premiere of this movie at the Toronto International Film Festival. I went with my mom, and I have to say, I was terrified going in. I was really nervous, I was worried that they were going to turn it into a cheesy rerun of Glee, and it was going to be a bunch of high schoolers just bopping out to some pop bangers, and they were going to take away a lot of the substance from the story, and they were going to try to skim past some of the dark parts of the musical in favor of some of the lighter, feel-good parts, which I was really afraid that they would do that, because that wouldn't have been a good choice, I think, because so much of what makes this musical so compelling are the really dark, complicated moral questions that it poses. But I watched it, and I actually think they did a really good job. The biggest changes they made from the stage show were swapping in a few new musical numbers and taking out old ones, and letting their star get 3 years older. But the heart of the story is still there. All of the changes that they made felt like they were changes that were made with the intention to tell the story well in a cinematic medium and not any other reason. The heart of the story is still there. This kid, and he's just a little kid, and he lies, but he makes connections based on that lie. And then he loses those connections when the truth comes out and learns to be truthful as a result. The movie doesn't shy away from the darker themes of the musical. It actually leans quite heavily into them. It talks a great deal about mental health. Amanda Stenberg, who plays Alana, gets a whole new song that is really, really insightful about the struggles of people who you might not expect to have mental health issues. And just because you can't see it on the surface doesn't mean that it's not there. And I think that that's a really important message. And I think that that addition of that song is a really, really positive change to the show. And the things they took out, they took out the song Good For You, which I actually really think works in a movie, because that's the most big melodramatic musical theater song in the show, except for Words Fail, and we'll talk about that later. And it wouldn't have translated as well to film. They said all they needed to say in that scene at the car with Evan and the mom, with Ben and Julianne Moore. So I came home from that premiere feeling pretty satisfied, thinking, okay, they've done this musical I loved justice. They told the story. And then I read the reviews. Dear Evan Hansen review. Ben Platt leads a musical with a rotten core. Listen, okay, I understand not liking the film. It has its flaws, and we'll get to those. But that is just cruel. So a lot of this criticism has been focusing on Ben Platt's age. It's been fascinating to watch reviewers exaggerate the facts to make their case. Almost every review seems to say he was 27 when he shot the movie, when actually, on Insider.com they point out he was 26. He completed filming shortly before his 27th birthday. When he finished his Broadway run, for which he got so many accolades and so much acclaim because it was such a phenomenal performance, he was 24, which means he was only 2 years older when he was getting called creepy and inhuman than he was when he was getting called powerful and the toast of Broadway and even movingly sensitive. So why all this hatred? Well, it's easy to blame the marketing team, so let's do it. You see, almost every one of these reviews seems to think that Dear Evan Hansen is trying to be an uplifting, feel-good story. And I think that that's the fault of the marketing. I think that they, in order to try to sell to an audience that was looking for, another high school musical, they sold the show as this feel-good, empowering anthem. The tagline they used was like, a story for the outsider in all of us, which is a totally different marketing strategy from the one they used on Broadway, and it fails miserably in comparison. On Broadway, the tagline was, a letter that was never meant to be seen, a lie that was never meant to be told. Evan Hansen is about to get the one thing he's always wanted, a chance to fit in. And that tagline interests us right away. It says this isn't a easy feel-good story. This is a really morally complicated story about a lie, and it's kind of a protagonist sells his soul to the devil kind of storyline. And if you market it like that, then people go in expecting to see that and are really impressed with how complex and raw the storyline is, instead of going in expecting to see something uplifting and feel-good, and your protagonist is a really morally dubious person. Then you feel as an audience member that you've been lied to, that you've been told you're going to feel really good watching this, but the whole time you're questioning the protagonist's morals, and it feels like that's not a choice made by the storytellers. It feels like that's a mistake. It feels like they think their protagonist is perfect, like a Gabriela Montez in High School Musical. And so that makes you as the audience member very uncomfortable. You're like, do they know that it's not okay for their protagonist to behave this way? Whereas when they market it the way they did on Broadway, you know that they know this isn't okay for him to be behaving this way, but people behave ways that aren't okay sometimes, and we should tell stories about that and teach people those lessons. The other thing is if you look at the Broadway production, every time they made like an appearance on like a late night TV show or a breakfast TV show to promote the show, they always had Ben Platt get out there and sing Waving Through a Window in character as Evan. And on the iconic Late Night with Seth Meyers performance, they even had him do the scene with Zoe. This was before the show opened, so this was one of the first things most people saw of this show. It was the first time I saw anything from this show. And what's brilliant about this is that by doing the scene with Zoe and then having Ben Platt sing Waving, they are really showing you how messed up this kid is. They're telling you this isn't a feel-good story. Come to this show not to feel good and uplifted and have a nice light night out. Come to this show to watch this poor kid struggle in a way that every teenager I know right now is struggling, and every teenager I knew when I was a teenager, myself included, was struggling. It's hard to be a teenager in the social media age. It is really, really, really hard. And this show shows us how difficult that is, rather than, making it all seem like a bunch of fun and dance numbers. So because people have been going into this show with kind of the wrong impressions, the wrong preconceived notions, they find themselves getting really, really angry at the character of Evan, because they think that the creators of the show don't know that Evan is bad or Evan is doing a bad thing, because the marketing hasn't told them beforehand, you're coming to see a show about someone doing a bad thing. And so I've seen reviews calling Evan Hansen a sociopath, calling Evan Hansen like a toxic person, calling him creepy. And there's a major criticism going around that Evan Hansen never gets what he deserves. He never faces quote-unquote consequences for his actions. And I think that people saying this just want to see him punished, because there's a big difference between punishing somebody and having somebody face consequences. Evan Hansen loses everything he's gained through this lie when the truth comes out, inevitably, as it always does. And I think that that's a consequence that fits the crime. He learns his lesson. He sings a big long 6-minute song about how he learned his lesson. That's words fail. And I think that that's enough. He's 17, he's not an adult. He's a little kid. And I think that maybe people might have been more quick to forgive Evan if he was actually played by a teenager. I think Andrew Barth Feldman would have done an amazing job. But also Ben Platt is a phenomenal actor. You can really see him trying to do the right thing at every moment and just not knowing what the right thing is. And then he learns his lesson at the end. And in the movie, they even improve this. Because in the musical, no one ever finds out he was lying outside the Murphy family. They keep it a secret. But in the movie, he actually makes an Instagram post admitting to the lie to the public. And he goes right back to being a total loser forever. But he makes the right choice in order to make up for the mistakes he's made. And isn't that the best we can do? We can't hope to be perfect. We can't hope to never make mistakes. All we can hope to do is always make the right decision based on the mistakes that we've made in order to rectify those mistakes as best we can and never repeat them. And that's what Evan does in the movie. And so it feels like a lot of the hatred and anger and vitriol and hyperbole that has gone into the reviews of Evan Hansen, it feels like that's not because of the movie itself. It feels like it all comes from like cancel culture, you know, from people jumping to conclusions about this person's a terrible person and this is glamorizing this toxic behavior. But in reality, there are so many complex factors that go into a person making a bad decision. And it really upsets me when I see people talk about how Evan is a horrible human being, because he's not. He's trying his best and he does a horrible thing. But everyone will make mistakes in their lifetime, and if we learn from them and move forward and never repeat our mistakes and actually do the work to analyze why we made that mistake and how we can avoid making that mistake in the future, that is all we can possibly hope for. No one is perfect. And if you are going to cancel anyone who's ever done anything wrong in their lives, the only people you're not canceling are the people whose mistakes you just don't know about yet. Because everyone has done something shitty in their life. I promise you that. That's all I wanted to say. It's just this musical is very complicated. It's not black and white. And I think partially the fault of the marketing was making it seem kind of a little bit more black and white. And partially the fault of the internet zeitgeist right now is very, very black and white. And with all the performative hatred it's getting on social media, that actually proves that we need this story now more than ever. And maybe just like Evan, all the people who are hating on this movie on social media, maybe just like Evan, they need to learn that the way to cope with their isolation and fear is not to take it out on other people. I think we as a society all need to get better at handling nuanced situations, and that's the lesson that we can learn from this movie, I think. I want to end with a tweet from Patrick Page, who played Hades in Hadestown on Broadway, of course. Peter Mark says, "Sorry, but I liked the Dear Evan Hansen movie." And Patrick Page says, "Never apologize for appreciating something. It's a gift and a skill, and all too rare these days." If you like this video, be sure to click that subscribe button for new videos about all things music theater every Saturday. Next Saturday is very exciting because next Saturday is October 30th. And October 30th is the 18th anniversary of Wicked's opening on Broadway, which is another one of my favorite musicals of all time. And so I'm going to do a very, very special live stream event celebrating Wicked. So that is something you can look forward to next Saturday. Be sure to subscribe to see when I go live. I think I'm going to do it 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you're like me and you actually enjoyed the Dear Evan Hansen movie, maybe share this video on social media, you know? Share it with your friends or on Reddit threads or whatever, so it can hopefully open up people's minds. And if you really genuinely hated the movie and you have a really good reason why, I think there are lots of good reasons to hate the movie. So if you hated it for a good reason, comment that reason below. Evan is a sociopath is not a good reason because that's just not true. And it handles mental health poorly is also a bad reason, because I can tell you that that's a really kind of accurate portrayal of my personal mental health experiences. So just because your mental health experience doesn't match up with that story doesn't mean that that's an invalid portrayal of mental health. I really want to have a discussion with the community about this. Just please be, respectful of each other at all times. That's the big thing, is I feel like there's a lot of disrespect around the discussion of this movie. Anyways, you can find out more about me at www.mateochavezlewis.com. And if you like what I do and feel like supporting the channel, you can share it with your friends. I would really appreciate that. I'm trying to get to 5K subscribers by the end of 2021. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next week for the Wicked live stream. Bye.